easy it can be. Now, this 1 pound propane tank cost me 12 bucks. The 20-pound grill tank you see here, you can get refilled at a fill station for between where you live, honestly, anywhere between $10 and $20, which means you can get 20 fills of this little propane tank out of that 1 propane tank right there. Essentially, that comes out to, you know, depending on what you pay, 50 cents a fill. Now, a couple disclaimers. When it comes to doing this, you want to make sure that it is done completely outside in a well-ventilated area. I don't care how well ventilated you think your garage is or anywhere in your house, this absolutely should be performed outside. I saw a video like this pop across my feed the other day, and I thought it was a good video. The guy that made it, he did a really good job with it. But he obviously wasn't someone that's in the industry. So I thought there was a couple things I could improve on the video, just being in the trade. Now, the first 2 things you are going to need, well, one of these things at least, are an adapter. So if you look at this, we've got 2 ends to this adapter. This one with the pin right here, this will fit inside the tank we are trying to fill. And this right here, you can see it's kind of a cone shape. In the propane industry, this is a left-hand thread, and this is what we call a POL fitting. Now, depending on your grill tank, there are 2 different things that we could use. We could either use this, which is a little cheaper than this, but I would prefer to use this. In deciding which one you're gonna get, most valves on your grill tanks these days are gonna come with this dual thread. So you have a right-hand thread Acme thread on the outside, and then you have a left-hand thread POL thread on the inside. So with this particular tank and most modern tanks, you could use either of these adapters on this tank. But some of the older tanks will not have this outside thread right here. So you're gonna have to use something with an inside thread, which would be this left-hand thread. And one last thing that we're gonna need to do this properly is we're gonna need a scale. A simple kitchen scale will do, and I'll show you how to set that all up. The first thing I want you to notice is if you look at the label on this can, you'll see net weight 16 ounces or 1 pound. That's gonna be the amount of product that this can will hold. So it'll hold a pound of propane. It is very important that we do not overfill this tank. All propane tanks are designed to have a space, not an air space in the top, it's a vapor space. But if you fill a propane tank completely to the top with no room for thermal expansion, you can get some really high pressure increases in the tank, and that's when you start to have problems and casualties, because these will, under the right circumstances, they could hit 250, 350 pounds, and when that relief valve goes off, it's messy. Out of all this, filling this tank to the correct weight is of utmost importance. Now, to start, this tank is relatively empty. There's probably still a little pressure in it, and what we're gonna do is, if you look right down inside here, if I get the light right, we can just depress the pin right in the center there, and it's gonna start to evacuate the contents inside of it. But here's my first improvement I want to make on this video. In the last video, or in the video I watched, the gentleman used just a regular steel punch, and 99.999% of the times it's probably going to be fine. But when you're dealing with evacuating any kind of propane that's not actively lit, you're going to want to use something like brass, something that's non-sparking, because technically speaking, in the right circumstance, when he did that, he could have created a spark with that punch, and it could have caused an ignition. And another word of caution, and I'm not going to tell you who this is for, but you know who you are. When you're doing this, don't point it at your face. Okay, so I got my tank, I'm going to point it down, and I'm going to take this right in the center, and you can just press in on it. And nothing's coming out. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing left in this tank. If there was stuff in here, you'd be getting some product out of here. And if you overfilled the tank, I'll show you how you could fix that. All right, so next step in the process is we're gonna take this propane tank and we're gonna put it in our freezer for about an hour. And this is the next point that the gentleman got wrong, was he mentioned by putting the tank in the freezer that it will not draw a vacuum on it. And here's how it actually works. You've completely emptied this tank of any liquid or contents, except for maybe a little vapor. And what will happen, and this happens on our bigger tanks, is when we prep a tank with just vapor, you know, we bring the tank up to positive pressure. And let's say the tank sits in our prep cage for a number of nights and the temperature gets low. Those tanks will actually be drawn back down into a vacuum if it gets cold enough, and that's just called thermal contraction. As of right now, we're putting that tank into the freezer because any pressure that's in it, we want to decrease. Because if that tank is anywhere near the same pressure as the tank that we're filling from, it's going to have a lot of trouble draining, especially without some sort of vapor recovery to ease the flow of propane. All right, so our first step if we're using this kind of adapter is to thread it in. And if you'll notice, we've got an O-ring on the end of it. So you don't need to be obnoxiously tight with this. But what you are going to end up doing is there's a valve in here that as you thread it in, it's going to end up pushing that valve in. So we do need to make sure we get it in far enough to push that valve in. All right, now a quick test to know if you've done it right is you can open this valve up and we should see propane come out of here. Well, we didn't hear it, but we didn't see it because it's the vapor, but I'm assuming you could hear it. So this is in all the way. Now the next step would be to take our canister. I'm not going to fill it this way, I'm just going to describe it. Because my preferred way of doing this is with the other adapter. But if you were going to do this with this adapter, you would take your 1 pound propane can, thread it onto here with your valve off, and then what you would do is you would flip this over. And you can set this up on some concrete blocks or something, because ideally you're going to want to have access to the service valve right here, so you want to have access to get your hand inside of it to turn it on. So it'd be nice if this was set up a little higher. Like I said, I'm going to use the other method, so I don't really have to worry about that. But if you were doing this, that's how you would do it. Now for me, this is my preferred method. So with this, you're going to make sure that your shutoff valve is closed over here. And we're going to go ahead and thread this on to the tank right here. And to verify if you've done this right, same thing. Your shutoff valve's closed. You can turn the tank on. And we should be able to open this valve and see or hear pressure come out, which we can. So this is all set up correctly. Now I'm going to go get the tank that we're filling and bring it out here and show you how to set this up with the scale. I think it's also worth noting that we're flipping the tank over because we want to get the liquid to drain out of this. We don't want to just fill this with vapor. It would never last long enough for anything. So we're hooked up to our grill tank right here, and all we're going to do is we're going to thread this onto our tank like this. Simple enough. All right. And we're going to flip. Make sure your valve's open. Remember, we've got this shutoff valve closed, so we can open this. We aren't flowing anything yet. So we can flip this tank over. Okay. So this is why this is my preferred method. So you can set the tank up on your scale, and then you can turn the scale on. All right. And it'll be completely zeroed out. So factoring in the weight of the hose, the weight of the tank, from here we can purely fill the contents of the tank up to 1 pound. So we're on down here, you know, under the tank, and we're going to turn this on. I don't know if you can hear it filling, but it is. And we can watch, I hope you guys can see that, the scale going up. All right, so what I just did here is I didn't leave the tank in the freezer long enough. So the pressure came up relatively quickly. So what I did is I moved my tank down a further step so that the entire line coming from here was downhill to help just gravity drain a little more. So from here you may have to let it sit a little more. Don't be tempted to take that tank and throw it back in the freezer. You don't want to have propane tanks inside your house ever. You know, just take your time with it, let it drain, and you know, you'll get most of it. Chances are with the smaller adapter, it will drain a lot quicker. But you know, then you aren't weighing it out. What you'll have to do is take a weight of your tank, write it down, and then add a pound to it. That would be your total weight. And then if you fill it and you overfill it, then you're gonna have to evacuate the tank. So if you see down here, we needed to add about 4 ounces more total, so it's still going up. It's just a slow gravity drain now, and it'll just keep going along. Here's another tip for you. If you get to the point where it's not continuing to flow and completely fill this up, you can take the big tank and just shake it around and agitate it, and you'll keep getting a little bit more flow into the tank. So just keep with it and you'll get it all. Now when you get to the point where you can no longer hear the liquid draining out, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to turn off the service valve in the bottom of your big tank. So like I said, you're going to want to set this up on like cement blocks or something. All right, so we turn that over, flip the tank back up, and now we can disconnect our small propane tank from the big propane tank. All right, so we've got the tank filled. Something I want to make sure you guys recognize: if you went the route of the hose, don't bring this inside, because when you detach this, you're still going to have propane in here. So before you're done, make sure you release the propane with the orange I'm trying to do this with 3 hands, with the orange shutoff valve right here. Don't make the mistake of detaching everything, bringing it inside with the line still closed like this, and then accidentally opening it up and releasing it to the inside of your house. All right, so I've got the propane tank on the scale right now, and I overfilled it just so I could show you guys how to bring it back down. Ideally, what we want to be at is somewhere around 900 grams, which comes out to about 1 pound and 15 or so ounces. So we overfilled it. So let's say you guys got to this point. I'll just show you grams on here, 1,022 grams. What we want to do is we want to bring this down to around 900. And I say around because it's going to depend on what your tank weighed empty. Each tank is going to vary from tank to tank. So make sure when you weigh these, you weigh them empty so you have a good starting point. So now I'm going to show you what to do if you overfill it. All right. So now what we do is you grab your brass rod, and I got this from Tractor Supply. The thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to either sand or grind down the end of this, depending on the size that you get. Because if you get the one that's the same exact size as the hole going in here, there's a rubber O-ring that it'll seal around and you won't be able to evacuate it. So depending on what you do, you see I have this formed in a hook shape right here. If you don't do that, you're going to want to wear gloves, because if you get liquid propane on you, it freezes super quick and you can cause frostburn really quickly. So I have a hook on here, so I'm not worried about wearing gloves, but you're going to tip the tank upside down. So the tank's upside down, you're going to take your pin, point it in here, and you're going to release the propane. And you'll see drips coming off of here. That's the liquid propane. And from here, you're just going to release some and bring it back into the scale. And you're going to do this as many times as necessary to get it back down to the target weight. So like I said, tank and contents, we should be around 900. We're at 978, so we're going to keep going. And there you have it, guys. That is how you properly fill one of these tanks to around the 80% that you're looking for. I do want to give you a little disclaimer. These tanks are not intended to be refilled. I wanted to make this video because there's a lot of people refilling them, but they don't know any better. These aren't held to the same standards as your grill tanks or anything like that. They're a lot thinner steel. So you're really going to want to make sure that these tanks appear to be in good condition if you decide to do this at home. And again, you know, I'm just giving you some tidbits that are, I think, an improvement on the video that I saw about this before. So if you guys have any questions on this, drop them in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do to make this better for you. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.